Look out, Rob Manfred has got a new idea. Who's the most dominant athlete in sports right now? It's probably not who you think. And if you can't trust a certificate of authenticity, what can you trust? It's all straight ahead on a fresh edition of Gordon Damer on Sports. Hey, welcome into another edition of Gordon Damer on Sports. We've got another jam-packed episode on tap for today. But before we go too far, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, give the episode a like, rate the show 5 stars if you're feeling generous. Just hit a couple of buttons, people. It's easy, and it really does help grow the podcast, and I do appreciate it. All right. I wanted to start with something actually newsworthy, which does not always happen, and I know those words and Major League Baseball don't always go together, but this past week, MLB pulled off something we have not seen in a very long time. They made the baseball All-Star game actually go viral. All the talking head shows not just focused on LeBron's next move or what the Cowboys are doing or Dak Prescott. They actually had something to talk about involving Major League Baseball. And that does not often happen. MLB and viral content go together like chocolate ice cream and an onion. But this was different. This was something fun and fresh, something fans were pumped up about, the players were into, and even the media was buzzing about. I'm talking about the first ever swing-off to decide the winner of the baseball All-Star game, a home run derby style swing-off that was perfect because, let's be honest, the last, decade or so, the home run derby has been more engaging for fans than the actual All-Star game itself. So the final score, who cares? The real story, the swing-off, and it was glorious. Fans were into it, players loving it. X completely lost its mind. Baseball had a viral moment that did not involve umpires blowing a call or 2 teams running out of players at the All-Star game. And here's the kicker. For most of the players, it seemed like they didn't even know it was happening while it was happening. Like they found out about it as the game went along, and that spontaneity made it even better. You saw actual real smiles, guys in the dugout hooting and hollering like it was like backyard wiffle ball. And for once, the All-Star game didn't feel forced. It didn't feel like a marketing ploy. This was not, hey, this time it counts. It felt organic. It felt fun. And let's be honest, when was the last time anyone cared about how a baseball All-Star game finished? When was the last time anybody cared about how a baseball All-Star game started, never mind finished? Now, there was a time when the game mattered, right? AL versus NL. Think back to Dave Parker's cannon throw to nail Brian Downing at the plate, or Pete Rose obliterating Ray Fosse, Fred Lynn hitting that grand slam against Atlee Hammaker. But that's distant memories now. In recent years, the most notable moment was when the game ended in a tie because they ran out of players. That's where we were, but this time it was such a hit that everybody was talking about it. But you knew that the conversation would not just end at the game, because even some of the most traditional baseball voices couldn't avoid the follow-up question, right? Ken Rosenthal, one of the most respected insiders in the sport, didn't just enjoy it. He said what a lot of people were thinking. Could it be that the swing-off didn't just end at the All-Star game, that it could become a regular season thing, right? And that's an idea that could potentially change how extra inning games are played moving forward. Now, before you roll your eyes, keep in mind, everyone involved in this seemed to love it. Logan Webb was texting his buddies during the game saying, quote, "We should never play extra innings again." Now, Logan Webb doesn't speak for all baseball players, but if the powers that run Major League Baseball could, they would get rid of extra innings altogether, right? If they could wave a magic wand and make sure all games ended in 2 hours and 30 minutes, you know they would. They don't want games lasting 4 hours. The players certainly don't. And think about that. The players and the league on the same side of a single issue, that never happens. So yeah, a quick, exciting swing-off. Sounds like a dream, right? 3 guys, 3 swings each, bang, done. And let's be honest, fans might be on board too. In an era where everything has to be entertaining right now, waiting around for a game to be ending in the 12th inning just isn't it. A swing-off gives fans what they love: home runs, stars, action. And it's everything that plays on social media, everything that fits into a nice, neat 30-second clip. It's a highlight factory. You know Rob Manfred would love it. It was his idea. And because Rob Manfred's motivations are easy to understand, he's all about growing the game, right? Well, let me rephrase that. He's all about growing the financial side of the game. If something can generate more revenue, grab a few headlines in the process, and even go viral on social media, you've got his attention. Whether or not it's good for the long-term health of the sport, well, that's not really a concern. Tradition, legacy, purity of the sport, those are just buzzwords that don't move the needle on a balance sheet. And look, let's be honest, baseball does have some real challenges in today's TikTok-driven, short attention span culture. This is a game built on patience and nuance. It's not about instant gratification. There's no 2-minute warning, no buzzer-beating three-pointers. It's tension that slowly simmers, right? And then explodes. It's drama that builds over time. But that's not how most people consume content anymore. So this idea carrying into the regular season, I don't think you can rule anything out, because Rob Manfred is the commissioner of Major League Baseball, and Rob Manfred doesn't see baseball through the lens of tradition or romance. He sees a business, a brand, an asset. And his job is to maximize that asset for his bosses, the owners. So he's not here to preserve what makes baseball unique. He's here to reshape it into something that is easier to sell. This is the guy who gave us the Ghost Runner in extra innings. He's the same guy who floated 5-inning games. He measures success in social media impressions and revenue spikes. So when the All-Star Game swing-off went viral, you better believe Rob Manfred was watching with both eyes. And not a fan's eyes, but with a marketer's brain. He wasn't thinking, is this good for the game moving forward? He was thinking, how do we monetize this immediately? How do we slap a sponsor on it? Can we make it a recurring part of the product? Is State Farm interested? Can we sell this to Amazon? He's not interested if it fits the sport. He's asking if it fits the balance sheet. That's the world we're living in, and that's the guy who's the commissioner of the sport. And that kind of brings us to a larger issue. Baseball right now has kind of an ongoing identity crisis, because the truth is baseball doesn't really know what it wants to be. It used to be the national pastime, but that's now in name only. A game of rhythm and ritual, a game that unfolded like a novel, right? The drama builds until the end. But now it's trying to be everything else, and by doing so, it risks become kind of just like everything else. Major League Baseball wants to be fast, it wants to be exciting, it wants to go viral, it wants to be buzzy. And most of all, it wants to be young. So we get pitch clocks, we get larger bases, we want more stolen bases. The Ghost Runner, advertising patches on uniforms and games in London, players mic'd up during at-bats, and now maybe swing-offs. So they're chasing something, what they think the audience wants. But while they chase that, what they're losing is what makes baseball unique. Baseball isn't supposed to be football. It's not basketball. It's not the UFC. It's not designed to be consumed in short clips. It's long form, right? It's gradual. But Manfred looks at that and sees the league and seems terrified that those qualities will make baseball obsolete. They won't hold the attention span of a younger generation that's raised on dopamine hits and dual screens. So he's going to tinker, he's going to tweak, and he's going to try to simplify anything to make the game faster and more digestible to a younger audience. But here's the thing, the more they try to be like everyone else, the less they stand out. So Rob Manfred wants it all. He wants MLB to be like the NFL, the NBA, and TikTok all rolled into one. But you know what happens when you try to be everything all at once? You end up being nothing. Because authenticity still matters. Identity is still a thing. And when you lose that, when you sacrifice what makes you different to chase what others are successful at, you lose something in the process. Now, they're not worried about alienating the fans they already have, because they figured they already got you hooked on the sport. You're not going anywhere. And that's probably true. So hopefully the swing-off stays at the All-Star Game and does not move past that. Because look, it was fun. Everyone had fun with the idea. I did too. It was exciting. It was fresh. And it was made for an event like an exhibition of the All-Star Game. But let me be the adult in the room for a second, the voice of reason. It would be a terrible idea for regular season baseball. And I'm not saying that because I hate fun. I'm saying that because I actually like the sport of baseball, the real version. Baseball isn't supposed to be home run derby with uniforms. I don't want to be like the NHL with a shootout or soccer with penalty kicks. I would prefer to keep baseball what it actually is, a game of tension, of tiny little decisions, not three guys hacking at soft toss from the first base coach while fans count down like it's New Year's Eve. I would rather a game go 17 innings than that. That's how we're going to decide games moving forward. Do people actually think this would be a good idea? Yes, while other sports have similar type things to decide games, those aren't good ideas either. I don't know many hockey fans who are excited by the idea of a shootout. No one's going to suggest the idea that we decide overtime football games by field goal kicking competitions. That would be ridiculous. So is this. I get that the novelty of it was fun because it's the first time you saw it, but novelty wears off quickly. What feels exciting in one moment starts to feel cheap when it becomes routine. It just becomes another gimmick. And baseball doesn't need more gimmicks. We've gotten plenty of those over the last few years. Some of them are not bad. Pitch clock certainly works. Ghost runners and bigger bases, I don't need. So my plea to Major League Baseball is keep the swing off right where it belongs, the All-Star Game. The All-Star Game is supposed to be a break from the grind, a celebration of the sport. That's the space where the swing off belongs. Perfectly put. You put that gimmick into real games and the magic is gone. The lightning you caught in a bottle at the All-Star Game worked because it was a surprise. It wasn't on the rundown, right? It wasn't scheduled. But when you try to force that and stamping into every game in the 10th or 11th inning, you're killing what made it special in the first place. It's like interleague play when it first started. It was fun, it was novel, but now it happens every day and nobody cares about it. There's nothing special about it. Same thing would happen here. And unfortunately, the people who are running the sport, they get a taste of something fun and they can't help themselves. They want to package it and brand it and slap a sponsor on it. Remember, the Ghost Runner was supposed to just be for the pandemic and now it's here to stay. So here's the deal. The swing off was awesome. Genuinely, total win for baseball. The players were into it, the fans loved it, and the broadcast was all on board. And that's rare these days. But let's keep that feeling intact and protected. And let's not let Rob Manfred and his marketing team squeeze every bit of joy and fun out of it until there's none left. All right, next up, a question. Who would you say right now is the most dominant athlete in their sport? Now, look, it's a long list you could probably put together, but however long that list is, I think one name that has to be fairly near the top, if not at the top, is Scottie Scheffler. Scottie Scheffler very well might be the most dominant athlete in the world right now. Now, that might sound crazy, but after what we just watched at the British Open, I'm not so sure anymore. Now, look, that word dominance is usually reserved for the LeBron Jameses or Shohei Ohtani or Patrick Mahomes. And especially in golf, those conversations get a little tricky because the moment you even whisper someone's name in the same breath as Tiger Woods, people roll their eyes, they think you're a prisoner of the moment and that you need to slow down. But here's the thing. Scottie Scheffler is forcing his way into that conversation. And the craziest part, it's not even a conversation that's based on flash or highlight reel type of shots. It's based on this undeniable feeling that he has and that Tiger had when he was at the top of his game. And it's that when they're winning, when they're in the competition and they're within striking distance, the result feels inevitable. Tiger had that trait. Michael Jordan certainly had that trait, that unspoken universal understanding that if they're in the arena, they're going to win. It wasn't a matter of how, it was a matter of when. And that's where Scheffler is right now. Because when you look at what happened this past weekend, you could say the tournament basically ended Friday night. As soon as he made those two clutch putts right after Fitzpatrick made a brilliant par save, it was like something flipped and he just took over. Saturday was a walk in the park, and I don't know about you, but by the time I turned on the television on Sunday, it was already over. He took a double bogey, it didn't matter. Harris English shot a 66, didn't matter. No one pushed him, no one made him sweat, because when Scheffler got a 54-hole lead, it's over. It's inevitable. He's going to win. He's now 10 for 10 in those situations, and that is the stuff of Tiger Woods. And it's not just the wins piling up. It's how he's doing it, which is different than the way that Tiger did it. Scheffler's doing it quietly, methodically, without hitting you with insane highlight shots. He's not carving corners. He's not holing out from a bunker. He just kind of removes all risk from the equation. Hits greens, avoids trouble, grinds out early birdies, smothers everyone else with his consistency. So you know what it feels like? It feels kind of boring, which kind of makes it scary. Because boring dominance, to me, highest level of control you can have in sports. When someone is so steady, so technically precise, and mentally locked in that the result feels preordained, that is a different level of dominance. So the stat that was getting thrown around a lot, the 4 major championships he has won took place in a span of 1,197 days, and that's the same exact amount of days it took Tiger to go from 1 major to 4 majors. So Scheffler's not just flirting with history, he's right there with it. 2022 Masters, 2024 Masters, the PGA in 2025, and now the 2025 Open Championship. So all that's left now is the US Open, and he's got the career Grand Slam at 29. So yeah, if you're being mentioned in the same breath as Tiger Woods, you have to be, I think, in the conversation for the most dominant athlete in sports. Maybe he's not the only name on the list, but it's not a stretch anymore to say he belongs there. And he's so different than most of the people that would generally get that kind of attention. Like the week started with him asking, what's the point of all this? Just this existential shrug of a kind of quote. And then he goes out and obliterates the field like he's got no doubts about anything. So that makes him kind of hard to define and an outlier when you're generally talking about the greatest person in sports at any given moment. Especially nowadays where everything feels so pre-produced. He's not chasing fame, he's not chasing a brand, he's simply chasing wins. And right now he's collecting them at a pace we have not seen since peak Tiger. There's no extra flair, there's no flashy fist pumps, there's no screaming at the heavens. He'll win a major and celebrate for like 3 minutes and then move on. So yeah, you can debate who's more dominant by whatever metric you want, win percentage, overall influence, the talent level, the global attention, but you can't ignore what Scheffler is doing right now because he's dominating the hardest game in the world to dominate, an individual sport with unpredictable conditions in all these different countries, and he's stacking trophies. So it might be boring, but boring has never looked so inevitable. And maybe in sports, inevitability is the ultimate flex. All right, let's get into the final story today that really grabbed my attention this past week. It got a fair amount of attention, but I don't think people realize how deep this is probably going to go, and it feels like they're just starting to uncover what's really going on. And at the end of the day, these stories are just going to become more commonplace, especially if investigators continue to dig. So when you hear sports memorabilia, you might think, my dad had a Mickey Mantle autographed baseball or an autograph from Willie Mays or whatever. You don't generally, though, think of an FBI investigation that ends with someone ending their own life. That sounds like something out of a bad Ben Affleck kind of movie, but that's something that was ripped from the headlines this past week with a story out of Westfield, Indiana. At the center of this story, in case you haven't heard, this guy who was on the surface, just like any other collector, one of those die-hard hobbyists you find at card shows, or maybe if you're scrolling eBay for an autographed baseball or a piece of memorabilia from your favorite player or athlete. But according to the FBI, this guy was involved in something way bigger than anybody really realized. He wasn't just faking the occasional signature. He was churning out tons of them in bulk. Baseballs, jerseys, helmets, all the big names, even those who don't ordinarily sign. And he was flooding the market with fakes through online shops and even some dealers who had no idea what they were selling. And this dude was cashing in big time, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, millions over the years, and maybe more. And it's wild. It makes you wonder if you're not part of the collector. I'm not a big collector of things. But you wonder how many of these signed items that are out there, the ones that you see in all these shops, are they even legit? Because if this story is an indication, they're probably not that many, and certainly not as many as people think. And the scale of it was staggering. The FBI believes this operation went on for over 20 years, meaning for 2 decades. fake memorabilia was flooding the marketplace, slipping past collectors and shops and grading companies. And we're not talking about the occasional signed 8x10. We're talking about bulk orders of forged baseballs, forged jerseys, helmets, often tied to the biggest names in the sport. So the guy involved was Brett Lemieux, a 45-year-old Indiana man and the founder of a company called Mr. Man Cave. He was the center of what authorities believe could be the largest counterfeit sports memorabilia scheme in history, bigger than Operation Bullpen, which you might have heard about back in the 90s when the FBI cracked down on a massive ring of forged autographs with Babe Ruth and Mickey Mantle. This time, though, is even bigger. Lemieux's company claimed to have the largest framed jersey inventory on the internet. Turns out, a lot of that inventory, most of that inventory, was completely fake. According to reports, the operation made over $350 million in profit through the sale of counterfeit items. Let that number sit in. $350 million. That is not a garage sale hustle. That is an empire. And it all started to crumble in the last couple of weeks. Back on July 15th, the FBI and local police raided a location in Indiana, and that's where things started to unravel. Lemieux, sensing what was coming, did something few people would have expected. He confessed, not to the police, not through a lawyer, but of course, since this is 2025, he confessed on Facebook. He posted a detailed breakdown of the operation to a private Facebook group called Autographs 101, and he told it all. He named names, described how autographs were forged using auto pen technology, and how he and his alleged co-conspirators created fake certificates of authenticity that looked like they came from the real thing, industry's most third-party verifiers, JSA, Fanatics, TriStar. And he said the money was just too good to pass up, that he wanted to stop, but he just couldn't, and he didn't. The post was only up for a short time before it was deleted, but not before, of course, it was screenshotted and passed around the memorabilia community like wildfire. Then the next day, on July 16th, police responded to another address tied to Lemieux, and this time found him dead of an apparent suicide. The coroner confirmed the death, and the FBI is now involved in what could be one of the deepest scandals in the history of sports collecting, which always kind of seemed like it was kind of a dirty place to begin with. So this is where it gets a little weird and also to me a little interesting, because let's zoom out for a second. Why is autographed memorabilia such a massive business still in 2025? Look, when I was a kid, when you were a kid, a time decades ago, getting an autograph from an athlete meant that you had a personal connection to them, right? You met them. You were there. You got to see Hank Aaron. He signed your scorecard, or you caught a foul ball and Ken Griffey Jr. scribbled his name on it. That was special. I get that. But now, everyone has a camera in your pocket, right? You can record a selfie with LeBron James walking by. That's the proof. Isn't that a better connection to an athlete than a signature? Isn't that the real connection? But yet somehow the value of signed items has only increased. The market is bigger than ever before, and it's no longer about personal moments. That's long gone. Now, with everything about athletes, it's about commerce, it's about investment, and it's about status. That's where people like Brett Lemieux come in. He saw an opening in a bloated, unregulated industry, and he ran with it. Not for a year or two, for 2 decades. One of the more incredible revelations in his Facebook post was that after Kobe Bryant's tragic death in 2020, he claimed he pumped more than 80,000 fake Kobe-signed items into the market. Think about that. 80,000. That is a staggering number. And while he didn't disclose how much he made from that, you can pretty clearly make out he made a fortune. If he didn't make a fortune, he wouldn't keep doing it. So to me, this whole thing exposes a major truth that people in sports media or people in sports collecting just don't want to admit. The autograph industry is at its core built on trust. And that trust clearly has been exploited to the point of collapse, right? Authentication companies are supposed to be the guardrails, but the reality is they're not perfect, they're fallible, they've been fooled before, they'll be fooled again, and they're not regulated. There's no federal oversight, not saying that federal oversight would help, but it's a gray market built on belief, and once that belief is gone, the whole thing should fall apart. That's not what's happening, but it's what should happen. But here's the angle I think most of us are missing. It's not just about the fakes, what it says about us as fans. We're living in a time where our connection to athletes is already so distant between media training and controlled appearances and social media filters. We get curated versions of the people we root for, autographs, real or fake. We are desperate enough to attempt to hold on to something physical, tangible, a piece of the game that we love. Even if we have a pretty good sense in our own minds, it's probably not true. It's a lie. And that's why the Lemieux story kind of hits so hard. It doesn't just expose one fraud. He was a fraud, but it exposes the illusion that we as fans can still own something real. Think about the fans who bought those fake Kobe items after his death. To them, it wasn't a jersey. It was a memory, right? A tribute to a guy they loved. And now, chances are those things, all of them, were fake. Now, Fanatics, the multi-billion-dollar company that dominates the memorabilia space, has already said that they were aware of Lemieux and helped the investigation. They also claim that they never bought or resold any of his products. But it's kind of hard to believe that none of his fakes made it into circulation through secondary markets. Collectors are already probably panicking, trying to trace holograms or verify signatures or trying to figure out what's real and what's not, trying to determine if that jersey that's hanging on their wall is actually worth $700 or it's just a piece of framed fiction. Experts like Steve Grad, a well-known authority in the field, said that Lemieux's work was well-known in the industry, which is not exactly comforting, because if people knew that this dude was a fraud, why was not more done sooner? And what does it say about the other actors that are still out there? If one man could orchestrate this kind of scam for 20 years using high-level forgery tools, what does it say about the ones we don't know about yet? That's what I was talking about before, where it feels like if authorities and investigators want to really crack down in this space, there's no shortage of people that they could probably look into. So maybe that's what the industry needs, like a full-scale teardown, because the days of just blind trust and certificates of authenticity, that needs to be over. The days of thinking a signature means anything in a world where we have AI-generated deepfakes and facsimiles and auto pens, you have to realize those things are not worth the paper they're printed on. So I don't know where the future of sports fandom goes from here. Maybe it isn't about signatures. Maybe it's about access. Maybe it's about experiences. It should be about something you can't replicate and hang in your basement. Because ultimately, the Brett Lemieux scandal is just a cautionary tale, but it's also a mirror to us sports fans. It forces us to ask why we value the things we value and whether we're just kind of as complicit in creating an industry that's built on myth. So the story's not going away, not next week, not next month. That investigation will only go deeper and probably more names will be revealed and more fake items will be discovered. And really the only way to crack down on this is when fans stop worshiping a simple signature and start valuing something a little bit more real. Because until then, the tools of faking these type of things are just getting better, so stories like this will continue and then multiply. We live in a world increasingly driven by appearances over authenticity, where perception is curated, right? Reality is optional. Social media has only accelerated it. A signed ball, a game-worn jersey, a piece of memorabilia. These items are no longer just sentimental tokens or symbols of fandom. They become status objects, right? Clout for currency. And as long as those signatures carry financial and, more importantly, social value, there'll be people willing to fake them, to sell them, and exploit the fans' emotion tied to them. So the story here isn't just about forged items, it's about an entire marketplace that's built on illusion and a culture that's willing to embrace it, often without asking too many questions. So the deeper issue isn't just about fraud, it's about our collective willingness to believe. And until that changes, this won't be the last scandal of its kind. All right, that is going to do it for another edition of Gordon Damer on Sports. If you've not already, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening. That way you never miss an episode, and we'll be back later this week with a fresh edition of Gordon Damer on Sports.